Hi everyone, and I want to welcome you to today's webinar on the introduction to the Socrata Financial Transparency Suite of applications. I don't think anyone would argue that government transparency is not a new concept. In fact, smart governments have really already learned that. I think a good place to start, though, is defining what exactly transparency is and why it's so important. So I think simply put, government transparency is going to enable citizens, journalists, and analysts to easily research and hold their government and elected officers accountable for how they spend their money at all levels of government. For government transparency, this really means placing all financial and public information online in an easy-to-use, readily available, and understandable system. These systems allow anyone to see clearly how public servants are spending tax money and give citizens the ability to hold their elected officials accountable. Despite the promise of compelling civic and economic benefits at the macro level, many government leaders are looking for more clarity on the actual return on investment, or ROI, in open data initiatives. Agencies that are just getting started need guidance on planning and implementation for these efforts. Many others, which have prioritized ad hoc publishing of available data sets, are interested in creating a more sustainable program over time. Still, many others are looking to optimize high-performing programs by cultivating a network of partners to consume, promote, and share data at scale. If you want more information about how to define ROI, I'm going to encourage you to take a look at the Open Data Value Framework that Socrata has just published. This framework has identified 4 key pillars for ROI around your open data initiative. These are citizen experience, data-driven decision-making, operational efficiency, and economic impact. If you want more information, take a look at the Socrata site and then go ahead and search on the Open Data Value Framework. Today, we're going to talk about 2 applications within the Socrata Financial Transparency Suite. So these are really designed to enable anyone interested in talking to their citizens or other governmental around financial transparency. The suite is designed to do a couple of things. First, enable citizens and governments to make better decisions with visualizations. So this is really about moving beyond the PDFs and kind of the complex spreadsheets. Drastically reduce administrative and production costs, because as you move online, you don't necessarily need to worry about a lot of those other documents like PDFs and spreadsheets. Encourage community self-service and discovery. We've optimized the application for citizens, and really the goal in this is to require no prior knowledge of finance. So we know that government finance is difficult, and we wanted to simplify that as much as possible. We created these applications using a very standard, simple data schema and really kept as simple terms as we could for citizens to understand what's going on. You're going to get a very modern visual experience with a responsive design, which we're going to look at in a few minutes. And then obviously this conforms to open data principles. So being able to access an API and also access the raw data for people that are interested in that. So today, the Financial Transparency Suite of apps includes 2 products. Socrata Open Budget, which is an application that enables users to navigate all aspects of the capital and operating budgets and view allocations at the department, project, and individual level. And Socrata Open Expenditure, which allows you to track invoice level detail to better understand where public money goes and which vendors are using it. Let's actually take a step back and look at why financial transparency. And for those people listening to this, as government employees, you're going to be interested in understanding what do you get out of bringing your data online. And I think it's an important thing to understand. So today, taxpayers are more informed than ever. I don't think anyone would argue that many are actually out there actively seeking information, and given the way technology is made available, they expect to find it without too much hassles. The expectations are really set by the consumer technology they interact with every day. From just basic news to shopping to travel to entertainment, they're constantly provided with rich interactive experiences that enable them to find the information they need to make everyday decisions. They expect no less of an experience from the public sector organizations that they're going to interact with. For governments, ROI and cost savings are important, and there are many examples of how open data has helped with this. So, for example, from a Capgemini study in 2014, open data and access to real-time information saved over $1 million for the city of San Francisco. The city's chief innovation officer announced in June 2012 that access to real-time transit data resulted in 21.7% fewer San Francisco 311 calls. This decrease in call volume resulted in about $1 million of savings a year. So let's go ahead, and now that we've kind of looked at the basics of why financial transparency, let's take a look at an approach. And this is something that as you're starting to build out an open data program, based on our experience, we put together kind of a maturity model. And it's important to understand that, you're not going to say that you're only at a specific maturity model, but it gives you the ability to look across your program and to really understand kind of what experiences people expect and kind of how you can look at that based on what we've seen within our customers. So when you think about kind of just the basic catalogs that are out there, that's kind of level 2. That's once I've done kind of putting things online and I realize I need to move to a more specific publishing process, then the catalog phase is there. When we look at things like the Socrata Financial Transparency Suite, we're really looking at level 4, where we're considering data as a platform. And this is a couple of big reasons. One is that we're providing consumer-style web and mobile interfaces. So as a consumer, I'm using things like Facebook, I'm using Twitter, heavy visualizations to get my data across. And we're bringing that directly to the consumer so that they can work within a context that makes sense. They're also getting storytelling tools. So as a publisher, you are given the ability to tell a story through your data. And this means that you're no longer kind of limited to what you can put in a PDF and kind of move beyond that. So when we talk about things like financial transparency, we're really talking about creating or treating data as a platform, and that's kind of an important thing to keep in mind. Let's actually take a quick look at the financial transparency apps themselves. And this is kind of important to understand. When we built the applications, we really spent some time trying to think about, and we worked with a lot of different governments, and you can take a look at our sites and kind of see which ones we've looked at. So Montgomery County, and other large cities have been kind of instrumental in how we built this. And just to be clear, we're not talking about just large cities. We also have a set of smaller cities as well. So you do have the ability to tailor and tell that story. But we really were trying to humanize a lot of the complex financial issues. So as someone who's interested in my city government, what I'm really finding is that I couldn't understand how the money was being spent. I couldn't understand the budgeting process. And really what we've done within the applications is that we've enabled citizens to find the data that matters to them. And this is really looking at the neighborhood level data. And that's something that you do want to keep in mind. So it allows citizens to look at kind of what's affecting me, for example, within a budget. Are there going to be new schools built? What kind of expenditures are happening around me? We also look to move beyond transparency, and part of this is, and this is where it always becomes interesting when you look at kind of trying to define ROI. When you think about ROI, we tend to focus on very hard numbers. Where it gets a little bit soft, though, is what's at work to foster an active dialogue. Traditionally, things like open budget and open expenditure have helped reduce FOIA requests. So what that means is instead of citizens sending in requests that we then have to service, which costs money, they can actually find that data online. Well, and what happens though is that it also allows you to hold an active dialogue. So as you're building out a budget, you can post up those numbers and let people start to look at them. And this engages your community and also helps them understand what's going on around different budgeting aspects or different spending aspects as well. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at our open budget application and spend a few minutes just looking at that. So what you see here is Open Budget for Evergreen, which is a demo site that we have. And I just want to spend a few minutes kind of looking at it. So kind of at the top level, you'll notice that you have the ability to go ahead and kind of look at a map. And what this means is I can hold my mouse over and you can see kind of what's going on around me. So I can also do things like drill in and see more detail using the map's capability. So being location aware means that I can look at a map and I can kind of see what's going on. So for example, in this fire station replacement, I can see kind of where the street is that's located. I can also see how much money is being spent. And then down the bottom, I can actually see the phase that it's in. So this means that they're doing preliminary design. If we go back up to our home page here, you'll notice that we have our operating budget on the left-hand side and our capital budget on the right-hand side. If I wanted to drill in, for example, into Health and Human Services, you can see that underneath Health and Human Services, we have one department. I can also show this over time if I wanted. So if I had multiple departments, I could start doing comparison. I can also go ahead and drill in a little bit deeper and see where that money is actually getting spent. So as you can see, there's currently 61 programs that are actually being supported underneath this operating budget. And then once again, I can drill in a little bit deeper if I want to see what's going on within, for example, the shelter services. And this gives me the ability to go ahead and kind of see down to the line items what's happening. So if I select contracts and services, you can see that I have professional services, what the expenditure type is, and then the amount. Really, the idea is that it allows us to look at our budget in a very hierarchical fashion. So as a consumer or as a citizen not familiar with this, I can find things easily. We can also go ahead and look at our search bar up here. And if I wanted, I could go ahead and do things like search. And you'll notice that it pulls up things like the school gymnasium, which is a project. So it allows me to go ahead and search for that information underneath it. So it allows me to look at it kind of a variety of different ways. And if we go back up to the top, let's go ahead and look at our capital budget a little bit more. And you can see, I don't know, we'll click into roads as well. And you can see once again how much money is being spent. We can also take a look at kind of the project's map. So if I was interested in what's going on, I can kind of look at it through the map's perspective as well, which gives a lot of control around kind of what's going on around me. And then as we saw before, we can go ahead and kind of drill into it a little bit further. So I'm interested in the District East Transportation, and you can see kind of how much is being spent, what the location is, and then I can even click over to the project website if I wanted to as well. Open Budget gives you a lot of capabilities for simplifying that budget process. And I'm sure everyone listening today has, a huge PDF that they go ahead and that they publish. And it becomes very difficult if someone wants to read it, they end up sending you information. And what we do find is that we are seeing from customers that have deployed things like Open Budget a reduction in FOIA requests. So they're not, getting as many bombardments, and you're enabling people to provide self-service. Let's go ahead and back into our presentation. And then, as I talked about, it really is about promoting self-service. Both Open Budget and the entire Financial Transparency app, as citizens, we are concerned about money, and really promoting this self-service, as you can see here from the Expenditure app, becomes very important. Being able to allow people to drill down and see exactly what's going on makes it a lot easier for people to trust the government. So let's go ahead and hop into a quick open expenditure demo so we can take a look at that as well. So here you can see the open expenditure application. And what I did want to point out is that, like Open Budget, we tried to keep the application similar and the navigation concepts similar. Obviously, we wanted to tailor it, in some ways for expenditure. And you'll notice kind of across the top as well that you can select different areas and kind of drill in, which makes it a very easy to figure out kind of what's going on. So you could look by spending type, or you could look at kind of the biggest spenders within the entire ledger. You can look at specific vendors if you wanted to look at those. And you can also look by categories. So it gives you down to the line item and actually what's going on within the checkbook. So you can see, for example, as I look at different vendors, I can kind of hold it up and see the totals. And then if I wanted to see how much we're spending, we can kind of hop in and kind of take a look at those as we move along. It gives you, as the citizen, a very nice interface to understand it. If you look down at the bottom, we can look at kind of the ledger, so we can see who's spending, what they're spending it on, and then who's being paid. It gives us a nice, easy way for us to understand. As you can see here, if I hold this over for general government, you can see that we have 2013 and 2014. And we can see kind of how they're spending against that. And we can also kind of drill in. So it gives us kind of the ability to look at, as I said, kind of how they're paying, and then how we can go ahead and take a look at that and kind of drill further. We also have kind of a very intuitive search mechanism. So if you wanted to look for specific things, you could. I mean, one of the nice pieces, I think, is as you start to think about driving expenditure, becomes the ability to look at kind of what they're spending on, kind of how it's being paid, and then the payment terms, or the payment items that are being pushed out. So it gives you the option of kind of looking at kind of it over time as well. So if you wanted to kind of compare the invoice times and see kind of how much was spent with a vendor. As citizens are interested in kind of how money is being spent and who's spending it, this provides them an ideal way of seeing what's going on. And kind of two other things I didn't cover, by the way, in budget is if you look across the top, we do offer social sharing. So you can do things like push this out via Twitter or push this out via Facebook if people wanted to share information, which becomes a nice approach, that people can engage with their government. And if you have a social media program, you do have the ability to keep an eye on that and be able to have a dialogue with your different constituents. Let's go ahead and hop back into our presentation. So now that we've taken a look at open budget and open expenditure, I did want to take a few minutes and talk about the idea of deployment. Socrata does sell these applications in a SaaS-based model, meaning we're hosting it. We need some basic information from you, and basically this is your ledger data or your spending data. We can provide that, and literally once we get the information in the right format, we can actually have you up and running on either one or both of these applications within a couple of weeks. And obviously, as a SaaS-based model, it means that you don't have to deploy anything on premise. It's always available. It sits on the Socrata infrastructure, which makes it very easy and resilient in case there are any problems. And as I also said earlier, that these come in a responsive design. So that means that consumers can hit these not only from their desktop browsers, but from their mobile browsers, and they're going to get the same consistent experience and be able to find the information as easily as they can. Now, if you aren't familiar with Socrata, let me just spend a few minutes talking about Socrata. We were started in 2007. We are a software service provider. We focus on open data. Quite honestly, that's all we do. Our product sets are very focused on that, and that's the only business that we focus on. We spend a lot of time helping governments improve citizen engagement, increase transparency, drive innovation. Some of the most innovative cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, and many others are all running Socrata. We also provide a pretty extensive set of services and applications, and I want to spend a few minutes talking about that. So fundamentally, there's an open data platform that we provide, and we do encourage anyone listening who wants more information to talk to us about the open data platform. But we often find that customers are only interested in making available what we call high-value data sets. And these high-value data sets, for example, are your budget and your expenditure information. And this is where your financial transparency suite comes into play. We also provide an open performance product, which basically is about data-driven government. Once again, it's about providing value back to our customer. And then obviously there's a whole set of ecosystem that sits around this. So being able to work with civic app developers on taking that data and making it available. So there is kind of a whole world of other possibilities that Socrata provides, other than the financial transparency suite. Although, obviously for today, that's what we're really focusing on. Clearly, it's all about innovation through community, and this is something that we focus very heavily on. And if you're interested, please take a look at Socrata.com for more information. I did want to thank everyone for attending today, and I hope that you got some information around our financial transparency applications. And if you're interested, please don't hesitate to email us at support@socrata.com, and we can definitely get you more information around the applications. And I look forward to talking to you. Thanks.